Good morning, everyone. It is my honor to speak to the achievements and contributions of National Security and Intelligence Advisor to the Prime Minister, Jody Thomas. Jody, your service, dedication, and contribution to Canada spans 4 decades across many important government departments. At every step of your journey, your exemplary character, strong values, honesty, and concern for others has created an extraordinary example of public service and leadership to Canadians. You have created positive change throughout your career, uplifting those around you and redefining the culture of underrepresentation of women and others to serve our country at the most senior levels of government. What is intriguing for many is that your career journey started in the early 1980s, quite prophetically, in the engine room of a Canadian Navy ship as a diesel mechanic. From those early days in the Royal Canadian Naval Reserve that ultimately led to an officer's commission, your career sped forward to Public Works and Procurement, Passport Canada, the Canadian Coast Guard, the Department of National Defence, and now the Privy Council Office. As one of the first cohorts of women to serve at sea, you have seen and contributed to much positive change. Some 3 decades later, you achieved a significant milestone by becoming the first female commissioner of the Canadian Coast Guard. As a senior public servant, you helped to create a legacy of equity and inclusion and have supported the advancement of women to the most senior positions in our armed forces and the broader public service. You have also advocated for the federal government's recognition of victims and survivors of sexual assault, harassment, and discrimination in the armed forces. As Deputy Minister of National Defence, your formal apology marked a turning point in military culture. The apology was significant because it was heartfelt and provided genuine hope for a safe, equitable, and inclusive future. From the letters of support we received for your nomination, it's apparent that you lead with conviction and accountability at a time when these values seek a champion. Your attentiveness to the well-being of your colleagues is personified in your daily interactions. As an advocate for mental health and wellness, you encourage your associates to bring their whole selves to work, creating a positive space of acceptance for those around you. As a senior public servant, you have found yourself at the center of a perfect storm in recent years, faced with responding to some of the most critical domestic and international decisions in recent Canadian history. These include Canada's security posture concerning the war in Ukraine, critical intelligence and counsel to the Prime Minister and Cabinet during the occupation in Ottawa, which ultimately led to the Emergencies Act, response by the Canadian Forces to wildfires and national disasters across Canada, the COVID-19 pandemic, and concerns over Canada's sovereignty in the Arctic. Other challenges you have faced are not open to public consumption. The burden of responsibility rests with you to advise the government in the best interests of the nation. Many would struggle with the breadth and weight of decision-making required of you every day. You do it with grace. But it is family that is most central to your life, where you gain your strength, and yet you are always on duty to the nation, often pulled away from family and friends to attend to issues of the highest importance. Your job requires you to move through personal challenges, even grief. We admire your dedication to others as you carry forward with your unwavering service to Canada. It is time for us to recognize you for what you do and who you are. Thank you for continuing to advocate for what is right and for exemplifying the character and courage to lead in the way this era demands. It is for these reasons and your exemplary service that Royal Roads University today awards you the degree Doctor of Laws, honoris causa. I would now like to turn it over to our Chancellor of Royal Roads University to confer the degree.
Jody Thomas, by virtue of the authority vested in me by the Royal Roads University Act, and in accordance with the recommendation of the Board of Governors of Royal Roads University, I confer upon you the degree of Honor of Laws, honoris causa, with all the rights, privileges, and honors here and elsewhere appertaining. Jody Thomas will now be hooded by Dr. Veronica Thompson, Vice President, Academic and Provost. I'll now take this opportunity to ask President Steenkamp to present Jody Thomas with her honorary degree. Before I call upon Dr. Jody Thomas to make the convocation address, I will share a brief story. We had an opportunity to meet with Dr. Thomas and her family last night, and with a number of folks from the university. I can tell you, if you've ever wanted to be humbled with her accomplishments, the most pressing question for Jody Thomas was, are there aliens? Because Canada was recently debriefed on Area 51 by the Pentagon. And the most pressing question for me is, what kind of bow tie are you wearing tomorrow? So with that, and it's with absolute pleasure and honor that I would call upon Dr. Jody Thomas, to address the convocation. Please.
I need to take a minute. Thank you so very much. Thank you, Chancellor Chan, President and Vice Chancellor Steenkamp, members of the Board of Governors, esteemed members of the Platform Party, my dear friend, Dr. Jeffrey Bird, and most importantly, you, the students who are graduating from Royal Roads University today. I'm enormously honored to be here. This recognition is overwhelming. It's all the more significant to me in that I could not have attended Royal Roads Military College when I was a university student because it did not accept women. I can easily connect my mission to bring equality to the workplace and gender balance to the national security community to experiences such as not being able to attend a Canadian academic institution simply because of my gender. As I'll share with you today, we've come a very long way in the fight for gender equity, but not just equity, inclusion and belonging for everyone, and yet we have miles to go. I am the National Security and Intelligence Advisor to the Prime Minister. Usually at this point, I'd make some sort of self-deprecating joke, like who would have thought it was a good idea to put me in this job? But not this morning. In this present company, I'm going to lean into the fact that the path to become the Prime Minister's Intelligence Advisor took a long time, a lot of hard work, some sacrifices, particularly by my family, and the occasional sharp elbow. As I see all of you eager graduates completing this major accomplishment, I think of my path, why and how I am here. A key moment in my life's trajectory came at the age of 17 during my summer vacation. Yes, it was a very long time ago. I had been left with a list of chores to do in my parents' absence. Now, in my defense, it was a beautiful day. I was on vacation, and we had just moved for the third time in 3 years. That didn't seem to matter to my parents when they came home after their day of work to find me floating on a raft in the pool, not a single chore completed. I come from a naval family. The very next week, I was signed up to be in the Naval Reserves. It was not a punishment, although I wasn't convinced of that at the time. But it was a push towards finding some direction, structure, and a bit of work ethic. I was, as Dr. Bird said, amongst the first cohort of women allowed to go to sea in the RCN. It was not always fun. It came with hardship and challenges that I could not process at the time. We, my shipmates, and I put up with a lot, too much really, simply to have a chance and to have a seat at the table. And if you'd asked me way back then if I thought I'd be the NSIA today, my answer would have been a hard no. But once I made the decision I was going to progress, it happened more quickly than anyone, least of me, would have expected. It helped enormously that I am blessed with an extraordinary family who guided my path with overt support and encouragement, or more frequently, by ignoring me, ensuring that I did not become overly self-important. And while they believed in what I was doing, at home I was still just mom. My career was really quite unremarkable. I spent a big chunk of my time at Passport Canada, but I admit the call of the sea was always at the back of my mind. I ended up at the Canadian Coast Guard and went through a process that saw me named as Deputy Commissioner of Operations, and I did that for 3.5 years, and I loved it. I can't say that everyone within the organization embraced having me in that job. Much like my time on my first ship, there were men early on who told me they did not want me. They told me to my face I was not welcome. Some of them had wanted the job. All of them worked for me. And much like I did in my first ship, I just ignored them and got on with it. Because if you're going to do the job you're hired to do, then no one gets to tell you you don't belong. No one. From there, I spent 3 months at the Privy Council office and was named Commissioner of the Coast Guard. It was a huge honor. I was the first woman to hold that job in 2015, and today, we still need to acknowledge firsts, because there are still too many firsts. I was put in that job because a deputy minister sponsored me. He went around Ottawa and had conversations that said, it has to be her, she's the one we need. I'll always be grateful that someone sponsored me into that role, and that he and many others supported me and helped me grow and develop through strong guidance, support, and a little bit of lecturing. And so as you begin or restart your careers after your education, you will be encouraged to find mentors. Mentors are important in careers and in lives. They are the people who will help give you guidance and advice and help you navigate your job. But I want to encourage you to find sponsors. Those are the people who are going to talk about you when you're not in the room. They're the ones who, when they hear of opportunities, will say, have I got the person for you? Sponsorships matter. And it is said that women are mentored and men are sponsored. We need to change that. I've faced many challenges in my career, and the wave of sexual misconduct charges that surfaced while I was the Deputy Minister at National Defence will go down as the toughest, at the very least the most emotionally taxing. I was now a leader in an organization that had failed to do its utmost to protect its employees from a wide range of harmful behavior. During my career, I've witnessed misogyny, homophobia, hazing, exclusion, open contempt, and abuse of authority. We have an obligation to each other, to everyone around us. Inclusion isn't just having different people in the room, it's having different people at the table. It's lifting those voices that have been marginalized or silenced. And when we talk about inclusion, it's often said it requires leadership. Well, here's a little secret about leadership. You don't have to be at the top to lead. You can lead from anywhere, particularly when it comes to inclusion. One of the things I was working on at D&D was moving us from a culture of fitting in to one of belonging. And so what does that mean? It means that when you show up to your workplace, you aren't changing who you are to be there. You aren't hiding who you are and all that you are in order to fit in. Belonging means being who you are. This work at D&D was and is for all of you to take up as you start your careers or restart your careers. It is a shared responsibility. I applaud those who have had the courage to stand up to institutions, to speak up and to force change and force institutions to look inward and adapt. And so this brings me to my current role as NSIA. When the Prime Minister asks you to take on a job, you never expect it to be easy. It shouldn't be easy. However, I started in January of 2022. You don't go into a job expecting Russia to invade an allied country. You don't go into a job expecting your capital to be occupied for 3 weeks by a domestic threat. And you surely don't go in expecting to be dealing with Chinese balloons. Russia has brutally invaded Ukraine, forcing NATO to step up and defend our ally. China is growing bolder, more recently encroaching on the sovereign territory of North American countries. Foreign interference has the ability to destabilize our democratic processes and cause us to question our institutions. It causes us to question the credibility of loyal Canadians. Lies masquerading as truth are the defining feature of the online world. Those lies foment anger, the anger that you see everywhere online and that spills out into the real world. That is to say nothing of the threat climate change represents in the Arctic, to our domestic security, and food stability. Against this backdrop, there's an expectation throughout the world that democracy will stop threats from escalating. But democracies are fragile. It's too easy to slide to authoritarian or near-authoritarian state. So what does it mean? Well, as I march to the sunset of my career, I'm very aware that the next generation, and that means all of you, are ready to take the baton and run with it, and I am inspired by you. As you reflect on your accomplishments here and what the future holds, be bold and be steadfast. Exactly as Dr. Steenkamp and Chancellor Chan said. What I mean by that is don't take anything for granted. We must be strong on the gains we've made for inclusion, for belonging, even as we push progress forward, because history has shown us time and time again that it does not take much to slide backwards. Afghanistan and Iran stand as sobering examples of gains that can be wiped out with breathtaking speed. Big and small, the encroachment on equality, inclusion, and equity persist. Even in Canada, we have seen a woman fired for allowing her hair to become a beautiful and glorious gray. Democracy and free speech go hand in hand, and we are duty-bound to preserve both. However, free speech is often invoked to defend hate and abuse, especially against those who are fighting for change. A balance is needed. Free speech isn't a blank check to hurl abuse. Decency and shame used to stand as a shield against free speech run amok, but internet anonymity has largely eliminated this protection. For too many people, women and girls in particular, around the world, the future does not feel as bright for them as it does for you. So the road ahead continues to be tough, but there is no doubt. But there is a bright side, there is hope, and it's you. Opportunities are endless. We have rights, we have choices, we have voices. As we stand up for ourselves, we can stand up for others, right here in Canada and around the world whose voices are being silenced. And this is my call to action to you. We need to work towards world stability and fight for inclusion everywhere. You may find support from the veterans in this struggle. Many of us have been in the trenches for a very long time, and we know how difficult it can be, but we also know how to win. Earlier, I spoke of the opportunities I received thanks to a man who advocated for me, who became a sponsor. I now advise the Prime Minister of a G7 nation. I'm immensely proud of that. Each of you needs to be that sponsor, be the advocate for the people in your lives. Don't close doors behind you. Hold them wide open. Shine your light for others. Make their road to success feel safe and supported. Build opportunity for yourselves and for others. This is the hallmark of an evolved society. Keep close the lessons of history. Do not repeat mistakes. Push for truth. Question what you read. I could go on, but I've said enough. Our country is blessed with freedom of speech and opportunity, abundant resources, an educated population, and hope. Use the achievement of your graduation and all the skills you've gained to help us as a nation evolve. That you can is a blessing, that you should is an imperative. Lastly, so now I'll get emotional. I lost both of my parents in the last 2 years, my father in September. And so in their honor, and for him in particular, he was a naval officer who wanted to but couldn't attend Royal Roads Military College because he had siblings to support. I say once in a while, don't hesitate to ignore your chores. You never know what will happen.